Dead men tell no tales, but their ships speak volumes. Welcome to the Cursed Compass, where we explore the darkest maritime mysteries. On August 29, 1884, off the coast of Newfoundland, a merchant brig was spotted drifting erratically through choppy, freezing waters. The Royal Navy gunboat HMS Mallard moved in to intercept. The vessel was under full sail, but its trajectory made no sense, and repeated hails from the Navy crew were met with total silence. This is a chart showing the primary North Atlantic maritime trade routes. The drifting ship was the SV Resolven, a Welsh merchant brig operating a routine transatlantic circuit between Aberystwyth and Canada. Commanded by Captain John James, she was a working cargo ship hauling timber and cod. On this voyage, she carried 11 people, 7 crew members and 4 passengers. When Lieutenant William L. H. Brown dispatched a boarding party to secure the ship, they found a thoroughly seaworthy vessel, but there was not a single living person on board. A sinking ship explains an empty deck. An intact ship, still actively sailing but completely abandoned by its crew, presents a sharp contradiction. The physical evidence left behind requires a forensic breakdown to understand exactly what removed 11 people from a functioning ship. The Navy sailors found the ship's logbook sitting open on a desk. The final entry had been recorded a mere 6 hours before HMS Mallard spotted the drifting ship, giving investigators a very tight operational window. The domestic scene inside the cabin pointed to a routine day instantly interrupted. The galley stove was still burning brightly, and fresh food was laid out on the table, waiting to be eaten. Operationally, the ship was entirely sound. The interior lamps were still lit, and the hull was holding no water. The Resolven was fully capable of finishing its voyage. However, one critical piece of heavy equipment was absent. The ship's lifeboat was gone. Crews do not prepare a hot meal immediately before executing a calculated, pre-planned abandonment of a seaworthy ship. The missing lifeboat, combined with the untouched food, points to an immediate panic-driven evacuation. When an entire crew vanishes from a sound vessel, investigators must first rule out human violence. The prevailing historical theory suggested a coordinated mutiny or an external robbery aimed at stealing Captain James's stash of gold coins. The physical state of the ship directly conflicts with this scenario. The boarding party found no blood on the decks, no damage from firearms or bladed weapons, and absolutely no signs of a violent struggle. Furthermore, searchers located a small package containing 100 pounds sterling in the cabin. It had been left entirely undisturbed. The operational profile of 19th century maritime crime is highly predictable. Mutineers and pirates act on financial incentive. They do not deliberately leave easily accessible currency behind, nor do they abandon a prime, functioning merchant vessel to drift into open water. The physical residue thoroughly contradicts the primary motives of piracy or mutiny. The hypothesis of internal foul play is statistically highly improbable. To find the real trigger, we have to look at the exterior of the hull. The Mallard's crew documented localized damage on the Resolven, a smashed stem at the bow, and a broken yard on the mast. Crucially, the ship also suffered an unshipped rudder. The mechanism had been forced completely off its hinges. Without it, the crew lost all mechanical ability to steer the vessel. This mechanical failure aligns with an environmental observation made by the boarding party. Floating in the immediate vicinity of the abandoned Resolven was a massive, late-season iceberg. A smashed forward stem and a violently detached rear rudder do not happen spontaneously. They perfectly match the physical trauma of a sudden, heavy collision with dense ice tearing along the ship's hull. The pristine interior proves no human violence took place, but the highly specific structural damage to the exterior provides definitive proof of a severe, sudden environmental impact. We must also factor in the demographic background of the people on board. The crew and passengers were accustomed to Welsh coastal routes, completely unfamiliar with navigating the hazardous, ice-heavy waters of northern Canada. Striking a towering iceberg in dense, freezing fog would be a sudden, terrifying trauma for an inexperienced crew. The moment of impact would have violently shaken the vessel. Hearing the timber smash against the ice, the crew had every reason to assume catastrophic hull failure was imminent. realizing the rudder was unshipped escalated the situation from an emergency to an assumed death sentence. In their minds, they had completely lost control of the rapidly sinking ship. Driven by immediate panic, they made a fatal error. They hastily launched the ship's lifeboat into the freezing, rough ocean before properly assessing the Resolven's true condition. Small lifeboats heavily loaded with 11 panicked people easily swamp in open northern waters. The Resolven anomaly represents a cascading failure of human psychology, a fatal overreaction triggered by a sudden loss of steering in a hostile, unfamiliar environment. There is one lingering post-incident report that routinely surfaces. Shortly after the vessel's discovery, 2 brothers in Deer Harbor on Random Island claimed they found the body of a man dressed in a captain's uniform. The details were highly specific. The body was purportedly found sitting upright beneath a tree, staring out toward the sea. This claim is tied to a distinct socioeconomic anomaly. According to local records, one of the discovering brothers suddenly acquired a large amount of unexplained wealth immediately following the alleged discovery. However, to maintain forensic rigor, we must look at how this data was processed. The brothers never officially reported the body to authorities. Because no physical remains were ever documented or examined by the state, the story remains entirely circumstantial hearsay. While compelling as a piece of local folklore, this unverified variable must be weighed against the hard physics of the event. The statistical probability heavily favors the swamped lifeboat and a complete loss of life at sea over a single survivor making it to shore with a fortune. The final 6-hour timeline resolves clearly. The vessel struck an iceberg, lost its steering column, and a panicked crew executed a premature evacuation into a lifeboat that immediately swamped. All 11 hands were lost to the freezing Atlantic Ocean. Given the depths and currents of the region, the total lack of recovered bodies is exactly what maritime investigators would expect. The ship itself survived the panic. HMS Mallard secured the drifting vessel, towed it into the port at Catalina, and saw it fully refitted. Sold to a new owner and crewed by fresh sailors, the Resolven returned to normal commercial service and operated successfully for another 3 years. Her final disposition came in 1887. While transporting a heavy load of lumber from Nova Scotia back to Newfoundland, the ship was permanently wrecked. The history of the SV Resolven serves as a permanent forensic reminder of the fatal consequences of human panic when confronted with the vast indifference of the ocean.